going. Keep your fingers crossed. That's courtesy of Deb. She brought up these slides for us to watch as we're going, and we're going to go ahead and get started. It's a few minutes after 6:30. If you happen to look at the clock, the minute hand is right, the hour hand is not, so just don't get fooled by that. A couple other things, just housekeeping before we start. There's a tote bag in the back you can register to win. That's been out in the center of the library with the Earth Day presentation. And then the panelists brought some pamphlets and things are set over on the table, so be sure and take a look afterwards and pick that up. I want to welcome you all to this panel discussion supporting Earth Day 2019. The program is jointly presented by Voices from the Prairie and Princeton Public Library. My name is Carolyn Schaefer, and I'm here in two capacities. I'm a member of Voices, but I'm also the president of the trustees for the library. So I'm so happy to have you all here and the panelists that they've been willing to come down and share their experiences with us. Over the past 2 years, Voices from the Prairie has sponsored forums on a whole variety of topics, and one of the most important and pressing topics right now is our environment. There's no better week to bring it to the forefront, and the topic tonight is protecting our species. Bill's going to film tonight. The video will be uploaded. If you know people who couldn't make it tonight, it'll be on the Facebook page and also on the YouTube channel. And so we have this fantastic panel. They're going to inspire and educate us, and they are, here's Rick Siebert. He's from the Wetlands Initiative. In the middle is Deb Carey from the Illinois Audubon Society, the Birdsong Chapter, and Zach Grycan. Now, did I say that right?
You said that right, yep.
Sorry, from the Natural Land Institute. We're going to start with 5 to 10 minutes. They're going to introduce themselves, their organization, and the mission. And then after that, we'll dive into some prearranged questions for each panelist to address. And then the remaining time, we'll open up to you all for any questions you have that you'd like to ask of them. So Rick, do you want to start us off? And you can come here, you can sit there, whatever's good.
I'm fine right here.
Okay, and I think we're a small enough group. I don't holler in the back if you can't hear. We do have microphones.
Don't worry, I'm pretty loud. My name's Rick Siebert, and I'm the site supervisor for the Sioux and West Dixon Waterfowl Refuge in Hennepin and Hopper Lakes, just south of Hennepin. And I work for the Wetlands Initiative. A little bit about our organizations. We're a not-for-profit organization into restoring wetlands in the Midwest and wherever, basically. I always tell people I feel like I'm the luckiest person on earth sometimes because I just basically happen to be in the right place at the right time. And I take it most of you are familiar with Hennepin Hopper Lakes. Hennepin Hopper Lakes used to be corn and soybeans. And Hennepin Drainage District kind of marshaled over the ground. There were 9 landowners that owned this. The way I got connected with it was I took care of that pump for 18 years for the farmers as a part-time job to keep the water off the place. And a local guy with a love for the outdoors and everything. And I was taking care of the pump for the drainage district when the Wetlands Initiative guys came down and said, hey, we're talking about buying this property and reversing the process of what happened in Hennepin. I'm thinking, oh yeah, this isn't going to happen. And things just kind of fell into place. It was at a time when corn was $2 a bushel. 9 of the landowners in the drainage district were getting older, and lo and behold, the purchase happened, and basically in 2001, we shut the pump off down there that I used to take care of all the time to keep the water drained out, and all of a sudden we filled the place back up. All of a sudden we've got 1,000 acres of water. We seeded all the areas above the lake shore into the different various habitats and everything, and here we are in 2019, and it's an unbelievable place. It takes my breath away every day I'm working down there. It's been a big learning process for me. Like I said, I had a love for the outdoors, but I couldn't tell you what plant was what, when I first started down there, and now we have 670 species of native prairie plants growing down there. The response of the wildlife has been unbelievable. I brought a brochure that's got a bird list of the response from the birds that are around. I see stuff every day that just blows me away that happens in Illinois right out of my backyard that I never realized could be there. For example, just today, I've got a sandhill crane sitting on a nest right in the open where anybody that wants to come down and walk one of our trails, you can walk over and you can see this magnificent bird that I didn't even know even came around in Illinois. And every year, there's a different species that sticks out, a different plant that sticks out. Last year, the silphiums, the cut plants, the compass plants, the rosinweed was just fantastic. 2 years ago, it was the cardinal flower, another species. And we have well, people, we always call it a mosaic. I just thought there's so many different habitats that we have in Hennepin that are really special. And one of the really neat places, we've got a lot of places where the public can come and see the place now. And one of the places is the tower, the observation tower, where you can come down and see. Well, a lot of people don't realize when you park in the parking lot where our tower's at, you're in a dry sand prairie. You've got all different dry species right there growing right around where you parked your car. And within 80 to 100 yards, you're down to a lake shore in a very short period of space. And it's really special. We've got a new piece of ground that's been added here recently, and I'm really excited about it. It's 280 some acres. It's called Sandy Hollow, and we just opened that up to the public last year. And it's a series of trails through more of an upland type habitat. I'm really excited about it because a lot of it's sand prairie, and one of the things that I deal with mostly with my job is battling invasive species. Well, on the sand prairie, the plants are so adapted to that scenario that you don't have the invasives can't hang on there. So a lot of the plants that we planted there, it's been 3 years now since we started restoration there. It's going to be fantastic. And to see the sequence of events, how these prairie plants adapt, especially now that I've been there for 19 years, a lot of the original seedlings we planted now are starting to spread in the areas just like they used to do years ago here. And it's been an unbelievable experience.
Thank you. Thank you.
If you don't mind, I'll stand up.
Absolutely.
If I sit there too long, my
You
knees
want to come
won't
over
fit.
here? I can lean on the chair.
Okay, that'd be great. And just tell me to quit talking when I need to, because boy, once I get started, I can't stop. I have more fun than anybody, and I'm the most fortunate person in the world, though it looks like you dropped into a pretty good job too. I was born in Princeton, and this is just a spectacular library. We farm about 20 miles north of here, and I don't come to Princeton very often, but I need to start coming to the library. It's a beautiful library. My family came to our county, Lee County, in about the mid-1860s, and we've always farmed, and I was very fortunate to grow up on a farm that had virgin prairie, and it's sand prairie, because Lee County is merely sand dunes and swamps. That's about it. Anyway, that's what our farms are, mostly sand and swamp. So I was always very interested in the outdoors and plants, and especially snakes and turtles. I spent my childhood, dragging snakes and turtles back to the house all the time. And in the 1970s, when people were just starting to think about the environment and things like that, my mother and my aunt and I started a group called Natural Area Guardians, which was just a Lee County group, very small, and of course, Natural Area Guardian, NAG. So everybody remembered us. And I don't know if any of you are familiar with Bartlett Woods, Illinois Nature Preserve, not too far from here. A person gave that to our group, and since we were just regular people, we weren't a 501c3 or anything like that, we went to our local soil and water conservation district and asked if we could be sort of adopted. And they took us in, and natural area guardians became part of every soil and water conservation district in the state of Illinois. Governor Edgar signed legislation in, I can't remember, sometime in the 70s, making it possible for every soil and water district that wanted to have a natural area group. So, how's this end up with Amboy Marsh? Well, we did a lot of fun things, and one of them was we got a grant from, it was the Department of Conservation then, to study rare turtles, specifically Illinois mud turtle and Blanding's turtle. And one of our sites was what came to be Amboy Marsh. And like I said, I grew up in Lee County. I know almost every square mile of it. But let me tell you, when I set foot on this 300 acres of now Amboy Marsh, it changed my life. I am not kidding you. My husband and I built spec homes. I had a good job. I got divorced. I quit my job. I mean, it changed my life, this site. For the next 26 years, I continued studying turtles on this site, and I begged and pleaded everybody I could think of to buy this site to save it. It's a spectacular site, part of the Green River Lowlands. It has endangered turtles, endangered plants. It's great, and I know I'm biased. But anyway, it took me 26 years. I believe I caused maybe the early retirement of a couple Department of Natural Resource people because I called all the time. I talked to everybody from Charlie Potter on WGN radio to everybody, every group, the wind turbine people, everybody you could possibly imagine to buy this site. And it was, you know, over $1 million, a lot of money for a small group to raise. One day somebody said, what about the Illinois Audubon Society? And I thought, hey, they're into birds and they're little old ladies in tennis shoes, you know, which is what I am. Never occurred to me to talk to Illinois Audubon, even though I knew, you know, sort of who they were. I called them up and they said, sure, we'll come up and look at it. And this is, let me tell you people, after I had begged and pleaded for 26 years for a group to buy this site. Audubon came up and said, absolutely, this is a great site, we'll buy it. So let me tell you, I'm the happiest person in the world. Not only that, after they bought this site, I talked them into buying 425 acres, a half a mile from it, and now we're trying to buy what's in the middle there. So we know that large sites are more sustainable for wildlife and plants. But small remnant sites are also extremely important too. So I could tell you a million stories about Amboy Marsh and how we got there, and the second site we bought, Grinnell Wildlife Sanctuary, and I have brochures on the table about both, is really a cool thing that happened too. We had an Illinois Audubon member who had been a member for like 50 years, never came to a meeting, you know, sent his dues in every year. Lived in Chicago, and in 2016 he called up Tom Clay, the director of Illinois Audubon, and said, I'd like to give you some Walgreens stock. And when he came back from World War II, he put $1,000 into Walgreens. And in 2016, he gave us $2.5 million worth of Walgreens stock. He also, when he came home, invested in McDonald's and IBM. Smart guy. Smart guy. So we were able to buy Grinnell Wildlife Sanctuary too. So we have been just extraordinarily fortunate in Lee County. Like I said, I can go on and on. We are very fortunate people.
Zach?
Yeah, hey everybody. Who here has heard of Natural Land Institute in the room? So 4 people. Probably you guys too, I'm assuming. I think Jerry Paulson works with the Wetlands Initiative, if I'm not mistaken. Jerry Paulson is our former executive director. So Natural Land Institute is a 501c3. We're a land trust, not-for-profit, operating primarily in northern Illinois, although we've been around since 1958. And since then, we've worked to preserve and protect land about, it's over 16,000 acres now in the state. And the history of a lot of our sites kind of goes way back, and we've transferred a lot of those lands off to different agencies and organizations. So it's kind of cool to go to places and understand the people who I work for, what they accomplished, and where I am now, and thinking about what we're doing. It's all very, I think we all three have, it sounds like we really enjoy our jobs, and every time I go to work, I get to the shop and I'm just blown away by what you see as you come up the driveway, so. But I'm envious of all your sand down here. So a lot of our sites are finer textured soils, some the silts and the clays, and we own a lot of wetlands, and we don't have a lot of sandy sites that we own. I prefer to work on sandy sites just because I'm partial to a lot of those species. So you guys live in a pretty cool place. But I've been working for NLI since 2015, and I'm their director of stewardship. So I head up all the land management. Right now we own just over 2,600 acres, and it's about 26 preserves actually, and it's not evenly distributed. So, but it's a one-man show right now. We're actually hiring a restoration ecologist because he just stepped out. He went to the West Coast to be with his fiance, who he's been away from for like 4 years. I don't know how they did it, but I'm glad he went, and I'm looking forward to his. Taking somebody else in, and in the fall we're hoping to hire a technician and just get a lot more work done. We're just getting into some using different types of equipment and stuff like that. And I really think that we're, as an organization, my group is kind of turning the page, and actually we're going to start to get on top of some of these invasive species issues that we're all dealing with. But we wouldn't get anything done with just 1 to 2 people managing land. We wouldn't get anything done with volunteers, and a big part of what Natural Land Institute has done in the last 10 years is just really ramp up our volunteer stewardship activities, education of the public and our membership, and trying to get people involved in managing their properties or managing other properties, becoming site stewards, so important. So yeah, that's pretty much the gist of it. We own land, and we also hold conservation easements on a lot of properties, where if you own a chunk of land and you want to see it protected, or at least not developed, subdivided and developed in the future, we hold conservation easements that allow for that protection. It's a deed restriction, and we have to oversee that in perpetuity. So it's a small cost to that landowner, but they know that their wishes are going to kind of be upheld, and will be upheld as long as, so far, no conservation easement has been extinguished in the state of Illinois, and I hope it stays that way. But it would take a lot to overturn that sort of thing. So that's about the gist of what we do, and I'm glad to be here and hopefully get to answer some of your questions and talk to you folks.
Thank you.
All right, we have some questions. I think you've all seen them. We'd like each of you to answer all the questions, and we'll just go down and we'll just start with you, Zach. And I think we'll try to limit the answers to maybe 3 minutes or so. That way we can get to the audience questions after these. So the first question is, what does protecting our species mean to you, and how does your organization address that need?
So, like I kind of just described, a lot of what Natural Land Institute does is protect pieces of land, big and small. If we're going to own it, we'll own it, and if we're just going to protect it for somebody else or provide protection for somebody's wishes, we're going to do that. And really what we do for our species and all species when we protect land is we save those places. We try to keep places intact and establish corridors where we and other organisms can thrive. So as far as can you repeat that one more time?
Sure. What does protecting our species mean to you,
Right.
and how does your organization address that?
In general, I think protecting our species is entirely kind of encumbered in our mission statement, which is just to provide for an enduring legacy of natural lands in the state of Illinois. So I just think that without the natural places that you and I need to go to decompress, or the land that we actually use to produce the food that we eat, or if it's land that's now sustaining, you know, cranes on it, and frogs and snakes and just all the web of life in general. I think that's a big part of what Natural Land Institute does to preserve our species and as well as other species.
Thank you. Deb?
Illinois Audubon Society is the oldest conservation group in Illinois. It began in 1897 by protecting species, birds, specifically because women all wore them on their hats. And for many years, Audubon just protected those birds. They were just a voice. But in the 80s, they changed to protecting habitat for all of those species and started purchasing land and managing it. So I would say Audubon protects species, including humans, by providing habitats for everyone to live in a sustainable manner. Audubon has about 30 sanctuaries right now, about 3,200 acres. Again, like Zach said, Audubon, like NLI, often purchases land and then turns it over to Illinois Department of Natural Resources. We just turned a 400-acre chunk over to the Joliet Park District. We sort of act as a bank. So we protect species, boots on the ground, like we do at Amboy Marsh with volunteers like myself doing it, but we also provide funding to buy sites that someone couldn't afford to buy, and then we turn them over to them. So we protect species in every way we possibly can.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The Wetlands Initiative is just a little bit different version of what you two have described. One of the things early on that we thought about was, the majority of our wetlands have been drained for years around the country, all right? We kind of took a little different step towards what we're talking about. Instead of trying to protect what was left, which I think there's only like 1 or 2% of the total wetlands left in Illinois, we decided to restore, and that's what's kind of unique about what we have at Hemp and Hopper. Was we took a place that was cornfield and soybeans and reversed it back to a wetland, and then plus, it was kind of a different scenario than where you're saving a remnant. Hennepin wasn't a remnant anymore. The only thing that was remnant was when we put the water into place. A lot of the seeds that had laid there all the years it was farmed, when we put the water in there, cattails came up, sago pondweed, and all the different stuff that contributed to making Hennepin a great place. But it was not a wetland anymore. It was just a drained piece of property. So I think to promote not only saving our remnants, but totally restoring a site, kind of puts us in a different place and accomplish the same thing. So one of the things we struggle with down there as far as our species is letting people in to see what we're doing. And it's a tough thing, I mean, one of the things that I see with humans is garbage. I mean, it's hard to believe that people can't understand how to put garbage in a can. And I deal with that every day down there in places where we're letting people to see. We pick up garbage, and it gets disgusting at times. But then all of a sudden you meet a guy with 2 kids. I met a teacher the other day, had his 2 young kids out there, so appreciative to be able to take his kids to a place like this to walk around and see the beauty of what's there. And it just hops you right back up there again. And I guess that's what really inspires me. And a lot of other stuff, I keep talking about Hennepin, but we do a lot of other things too. Our inline wetlands that we're putting in the drain tiles, we have 2 in Bureau County. One's right outside here out of town, if you people want to see it, it's on the Benucci property. We're actually treating the nitrogen, the excess nitrogen's coming out of the tile water before it goes back into the system and drains all the way down to the Mississippi. And it's stuff like that I think is really going to catch on and very important. So.
Yeah.
Never heard of that.
The second question, we'll go ahead and start with you, Rick, if that's okay, is, and some of this I think you've already touched on, but if you could tell us about the various species that you do oversee and the habitats, and within that, where's the need greatest and where do you see some progress being made?
Oh, I think awareness is probably one of the biggest things, and there again, I talked about the public advocates thing. You know, I think it makes, when people can come down and see stuff, it does a lot more than I'm sitting here talking about it. When you can come down and see what's happening down there, I think it really makes a difference.
Deb?
We're very lucky to live in the sand, you're right, Greg, on the sand. We have a lot of diversity of habitat at Amboy Marsh because it has wetlands, sand prairie, dry sand savanna, dry mesic savanna. It has a lot of habitats, so that means we have a lot of different species there. You're seeing some of these behind my head here.
Yes, we are.
And it's amazing, like Rick said, it is just amazing. At Amboy Marsh, when we bought the 300 acres, it had 4 small farm fields. I mean, they were like 15 acres each, very small. But they had been row cropped for 100 years or so, you know? And we put stop log valves in, we paired all the tile lines, put stop log valves in, shut them, and got water. I mean, like the next day. And we have that sandhill crane nesting that you probably saw up there. 4 years ago, it was a monoculture of row crops being liberally laced with herbicide and pesticide, neonicotinoids, all those wonderful things every day. And now there's sandhill cranes nesting there. And as Rick said, there's hardly any habitat left. I mean, I've heard from like 0.7% of natural area left. So the habitats that we have are just extraordinarily critical because when those birds migrate through, they have to have somewhere to stop. And I know Hennepin Hopper is just a tremendous area for migratory birds, just spectacular. So, you know, providing diverse habitats is really good. Like Rick said too, yeah, it's awful to go to the parking lot that you bought or built with donated funds and find, you know, garbage and donuts in the gravel and all that kind of stuff. But you're right, you know, you see somebody out there thinking, wow, this is the best place in the world, and it's fine. You can just go ahead and handle that. So, I don't know if I answered that question, but the most dire need to me, more land. I want to buy every drop of land possibly can because, as Will Rogers says, they don't make it no more, you know? And to have sustainable habitat, to provide diverse habitats for all kinds of species, you need a lot of land.
Or it just needs to be managed right.
Or it needs to be managed right, yes,
That's
yes,
my gripe.
Stewards, just like
yes,
Zach was saying.
yes. Yes, and that's true because most of the land in Illinois, of course, is in private ownership. And we're never gonna own, no matter how hard I try, we're never gonna own it. So we have to help people learn how to manage their land and be willing to set aside some of it.
Do you deal with
Zach?
excuse me, do you deal with the county Department of Agriculture people much?
Yeah, I'm on their soil and water board.
All right, that's my main concern.
We'll come back to
Yes.
that
Okay,
after we get through this.
I
'cause
want to
yeah,
figure something out.
That sounds like a big question to me.
It's not
So,
that big.
Zach, the same question to you. Where do you see the greatest need and where are we making progress? And in the land that you've overseen?
So our lands sort of overlap here. We have conservation easements in Lee and Bureau counties. And I think that we've made significant progress along our streams. That we're making significant progress along our streams because so much of it's sometimes not farmable. Sometimes these places have been just missed by development or undevelopable. I think that a real success story has been some of these corridors that we've managed to string together through decades of conservation efforts in conservation for birds. I think that we're making good progress for our largest property is our flagship preserve is Nigrin Wetlands Preserve up in Rockton in Winnebago County, and that's where the Pecatonica River meets the Rock River. Our property is 700 acres, but that complex with the Winnebago Forest Preserves, what they own, as well as private properties that are not managed really, besides for farmers burning their ditches. All told, the complex of natural lands up there is over 1,200 acres in size, and where you have that much land protected or managed along two major streams that come together at that confluence, it's a very cool place, and very cool things are happening for the species that rely on those flyways. But if you look deeper at what those birds need, as far as the habitat structure and the insects that rely on the plants that should be growing there, that we're trying to encourage through our restoration efforts and protecting when we have remnants to protect, I think that the area that we need to focus, that my organization needs to focus on more, is when we do our restorations, we want to be sure that we're incorporating as many native species as possible to create the host plants that these insects need. I'm not an entomologist, and I won't speak to however many insects there are in Winnebago County or anywhere for that matter, but I know that there's a heck of a lot of insects that rely on one or two plants, or a group of plants, and if those plants are missing from the system, if they're not growing on our preserve or in your backyard, which you could do, which we are encouraging people to do, we're not going to grow the caterpillars that birds are necessarily picking to rear their young and to continue, that web of life that we're working so hard to protect and restore. So I think there's other success stories out there. There's so many stories from so many different people and organizations and whatnot, but those are the issues that I think are probably the most critical right now that I think.
You kind of touched on the next question a little bit, but I'll let you go ahead if you have anything more to add before we move on to Deb and Rick. But in all likelihood, your three organizations do overlap at times, which you just referenced. And how are you able to work together on projects, and does that make it more beneficial to you and your group individually when you can partner with each other?
So, being fairly young and kind of early on in my career here, I don't have the recollection for how our organizations have necessarily worked with each other. I don't believe the Wetlands Initiative and Natural Land Institute have necessarily worked together as organizations, but I know that the people transferring between these organizations happens all the time.
Gotcha.
Deb, you're involved with Middle Rock Conservation Partners, which is it's not a 501c3 yet.
Yes, it is.
It is. Oh, it is.
Yes,
501c3.
yes.
So
Yes, I can explain a little bit
Yeah,
more
yeah.
about that if you want. We do all work together on a statewide level. Illinois Audubon Society works with every conservation entity and a lot of private 501c3s too, wherever we can step in and assist, like I said, either with management or funding. But to bring it down to a local area, in Ogle County and Lee County and Bureau County, about 10 years ago, the Illinois Department of Conservation started a new program, and it's based on the fact that the federal government gives each state Department of Natural Resources funding, and you have to have a plan, which is a good idea. It's called the Wildlife Action Plan, And in that plan, the Illinois Department of Natural Resources chose areas called Conservation Opportunity Areas, COAs. Our government loves letters, right? They do. But anyway, I'll tell you, I've worked with them for 45 years, and it's always a new program. But anyway, Conservation Opportunity Areas. Some wonderful areas in Ogle County, some great stand areas in the Green River Lowlands in Lee County, and some areas in Bureau County. All were chosen as conservation opportunity areas. And DNR wanted us to get together and manage them. Well, this was before I got involved with Illinois Audubon, so I thought, hey, maybe there will be some money and I can buy Amboy Marsh. So I started a group, and we called it the Middle Rock Conservation Partners. And it was people from NLI, it was people from the Nature Conservancy, Byron Forest Preserve, Dixon Park District, Lee, Whiteside, Bureau County Soil and Water Conservation District. All of us who manage land, either as volunteers or as paid staff or as professionals, work together all the time because we know all together we can accomplish a whole lot more than one group can. And we have been undyingly successful. In fact, we have a grant in right now to Illinois Clean Energy to buy a 90-acre wooded parcel along Rock River. We just got our 501c3 status. And people might say, well, why do you need another group? There's already a lot of groups. Well, Middle Rock handles little local things, whereas Audubon may be more statewide, or NLI is, you know, up in the Rockford area, or Wetland is really the Dixon and Hennepin Hopper projects. Middle Rock is professional people and volunteers coming together on a monthly basis. And let me tell you, one thing that has been a great benefit about this is it not only is protecting land and teaching people, it's great for people to sit down together and talk about their problems and their successes. It's a meeting of people who do this every day, either for a living or as a volunteer, and we can say, oh, that garbage in the parking lot is driving me crazy. Or we can say, wasn't this successful how we did this? So boy, I can't tell you, we work together.
Right.
When you're talking about that, one of the things that we strive for in everything we do is biodiversity. You know, a little bit of everything, we'll take care of everything. Well, I think that this is our biodiversity. We work with the Department of Natural Resources fish biologists. We have a crew at the Medallion Tallgrass Wildlife Refuge, or not Wildlife Refuge, it's Tallgrass Prairie.
Yeah.
We've had a crew there working with U.S. Fish and Wildlife for over 20 years now. We're working with an Audubon Society at Indian Branch Marsh, almost right inside Chicago. You know, so we haven't crossed paths and everything, but we do have
There's a lot of
there's a lot of interplay. And like you say, I call that our biodiversity, you know, the different groups and everything. And we get a lot more accomplished with all the pieces together.
Absolutely.
That's fantastic. The last question before we go to the audience is, for all of us, what volunteer opportunities are available, and how do you let people know what they can do, or what we should be doing in our own backyard, as you referenced plants? And we'll go ahead and start with you, Rick.
Right now, we on our website, you can look on there, and we usually have a volunteer group in the spring, midsummer, that helps us plant plants. And then we have another group in the fall where we go out and collect seed, and really beneficial for us. Right now at Hennepin Hopper, we don't have, and say a guy calls me up and wants something to do. I mean, we've always wanted to get something like that in place, but we really don't have those opportunities right now.
The fall and spring we do have.
Yeah, the fall and the spring we do have opportunities.
I've done that for him a lot of times. Not that hard to work, 4 hours a day, and you always walk away smart.
And you walk away with a smile on your face.
They
Deb?
might talk in Latin, but they come down to the
Well, you can probably see from some of the slides that we have some pictures of volunteers on the slide program. We rely totally on volunteers for all of Illinois Audubon sanctuaries. We only have volunteer managers. We have no paid staff. That hopefully is going to change this summer where Audubon is going to hire a person. But at this point, we are all volunteers. And let me tell you, you can volunteer 80 hours a week at any place. There's always stuff to do. We meet every Friday morning at 9 o'clock at Amboy Marsh and Grinnell and do things from picking up garbage to repairing fence to cutting honeysuckle, depending on the season. There's always something to do. Tomorrow we have an herbicide class for volunteers where if you want to help us cut and treat honeysuckle or buckthorn, then you can get certified to apply an approved herbicide on those stems. So we have a very active volunteer program because we completely depend on volunteers. I'm on the Illinois Audubon board, and let me tell you, I understand that all of these sanctuaries would not exist if it weren't for volunteers. We love our volunteers. We try to take really good care of them, and it's a lot of fun. I mean, it's work, but it is really rewarding. And again, on our webpage, you can sign up on our brochures. It gives you a lot of information, and I go around and talk and tell people about volunteer opportunities, and I'm always the first one to raise my hand and talk.
And Zach?
Do we all have information on the back table?
Yes.
Yeah, so if anybody's interested in any of organizations or volunteer days or opportunities, I know there's a lot of great information on the back table before you leave. We hold, we do a lot of volunteer, I mean, it's the same story, right? We wouldn't get anything done without volunteers. So we hold a lot of scheduled, like every month there's a, first Saturday at Burr Oak Valley Preserve, third Saturday at Silver Creek Woods. Those are two sites up in like the Rockford area. Every Wednesday at Nigrin Wetland Preserve, 9 to 3. So we have regularly scheduled ones, and we do events for the public. We try to get education opportunities out there publicized that we can train just everyday average people how to use a chainsaw, how to do a prescribed burn, how to do that safely, or understand your limitations and know if you gotta hire somebody or get your friends together to do it. We do winter tree identification. So what the heck do I need to be paying attention to in my woods? So that's those things I've really taken a lot of pride in doing with NLI, and I think that we're connecting with a lot of people. We hold a lot of different events, and I think that I just think that connecting with different kinds of people and getting people kind of on board, on the same page as far as what we know, how to go about doing restoration, how to go about restoring the ecology of our landscape. That's going to go so much further if we can connect with more and more people. Yeah.
Great, thank you. So be sure to pick something up, and then on your way out, and we can all look into that. So we're going to go ahead and go to the audience, and I let you go ahead.
My question I worked before I retired in northeast Brill County, delivered mail for almost 30 years. And years ago, we used to get these surveys for pheasants. Well, we gave up, there isn't any pheasants. And now what I've been noticing the last couple of days, went to Malden and then to Rock Falls and then back home. I was specifically looking for meadowlarks. I saw 2 pairs. 2 pairs. There used to be hundreds of meadowlarks, you'd hear them everywhere. And the reason they are no longer is because everybody mows the ditches once before Memorial Day, once before the 4th of July. All these birds give up nesting on the 10th. If they haven't got them up by the 10th, they're done. These species are gonna go extinct. In other words, they're not here anymore. They're gone. And where I lived, you used to have the northern prairie chickens. We used to have them where I live now. I used to have pheasants, killdeers, and larks, and maybe a snipe once in a while. See none of them now because they cannot get young off a nest without them being destroyed. How do you change minds, make it illegal?
You know, it's funny, I was talking with a guy the other day that, our equipment is, I mean, just our lawn, you look at when you were growing up, the lawnmower you had.
Yeah.
You didn't have the lawnmowers you
They
have
got the big
today.
bat wing, you
And
know?
then, yeah, and then he was talking, you know, we used to mow a little place in the yard and everything else was grass and we had quail whistling. We had pheasants running here, we had rabbits running here. And I don't know, I think we just got to where we think we need to mow everything anymore.
It's insane.
It is insane.
Well, it takes out the hedgerows and there's no drainage ditches anymore either.
It is, I mean, it is, people ask the question sometimes, you know, what happened to the wildlife and all that. But the change in farming, and again, my family's farmed since 1860 in Lee County, and I have seen it. And the home farm was a cow-calf operation for 100 years. And in the 60s, when everybody said, get rid of those hedgerows, get rid of the creek, everything got completely tiled out. This farm that was a section of absolutely drop-dead, fantastic habitat is now row crops. And my dad lives on the family farm and he's 93. And his biggest fear is when he dies, I'm gonna take all that tile out. I mean, I'm not kidding you. He is really concerned about that because he, you know, he started really farming in the 50s and 60s and that's what you did. And I don't have the answer for changing minds. I'm a farmer. The farm I have is all in conservation reserve, but the rest of my family, the rest of my relatives, the rest of my neighbors, if it's green, it